Hi, if you're listening to this, we just started talking.
Do one more time.
What?
Because I talked right over you saying hi.
Oh. Hi, if you're listening to this. We started talking before talking? I don't know. So here's that.
I think this is episode 3.
It's the best intro, or I don't know what to call that. Let me try.
Depending on how long it goes, it could be 3 and 4. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? This is a podcast that's unnamed yet, so we're trying to figure out how to name it.
You probably know the name. We don't.
We're gonna call it Yellow Spandex because why not? And I'm Vince talking. This is Rod. And you got Josh. You got RKVC here, and Josh, you're also in music and do production stuff and engineering. But we are all nerds of movies and everything culture, pop culture. So
yeah, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people in that kind of in music, and especially even in recording music or something like that, they are all kind of a little bit nerds. Because Rod and I went to high school. Rod and I went to college.
It felt like high school.
It did. Rod and I went to college, and we just hung out one night, and it was like, oh, this is really cool. And I remember I bought a book once, and that was when Amazon was really, really early.
wow.
And so you could buy only books and VHS, I think, on Amazon, maybe DVDs. But it would say, hey, and this new thing was like, hey, we'll recommend something to you. So when I went to go buy this engineering book for music,
textbook?
It was like
the textbook one.
I think it was the Mixing Engineer's Handbook.
It's a regular
I love
book,
that
but
book.
it's not actually a textbook. It was a textbook for us, but it's a normally
It's a
published.
pretty good
book.
read.
It's
not
it's a-
boring.
That was the only
standard.
one I actually bought.
It's a standard, but it wasn't created to be a textbook. It just ended up becoming one in a lot of places.
Because it was interviews. I think most of it wasn't.
The end. So it's the first 2/3 of it was all the the actual best practices and everything,
Yeah.
and then the 2/3 the last third of it was the interviews with
Yep.
different genres and producers and stuff and how they break those rules.
Yeah. So all these music producers were in it. Anyway, when you bought the book, it would say, hey, if people who bought this also bought this. And I looked down, and there was a bunch of nerd stuff, including the X-Men animated series on VHS.
Yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was like, we are all nerds. We just
Yeah.
all are. I feel like it.
Yeah.
Because Dan
Wolf.
Wolf? Well, I don't know if he was as much, but I know that Strickland was, and
yeah.
Gerard's was, and a bunch of people like that. Other people from college.
That's cool.
We all
Yeah.
came up around the same time, and to be honest, I think it was the best times for cartoons.
The 90s was it was kind of if right now in the 2000 what is this considered 2010s?
Yeah, this is the
guess.
2020s.
Almost.
Well, it's not 2020 yet.
No, but it's in between the 20s.
But I mean, if you go by the numbers,
Oh, I guess the tens.
the tens, I think is what it's called because
Would
you call
go
the
up to
90s.
20.
Yeah. So right now, if right now is the golden era of movies, the MCU and stuff. I think the 90s was probably the golden era for comics going to animation.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit in the 80s, too.
A little in the 80s, but between the X-Men animated series, Batman animated series, Spider-Man.
Flash. Justice League.
That was
Adventures.
almost 2000s.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm thinking mid 90s, actually it was Marvel again. Well, I guess Batman. Because the Batman animated series created Harley Quinn, and kind of our picture of Poison Ivy. I know she'd been in stuff before. Was she in stuff before? Or was she for the okay? But I think my vision of Poison Ivy is from animated series, and then once you saw Uma Thurman do Poison Ivy, it was kind of a version of the one from the cartoon,
I didn't even remember it was her. I watched it
really?
with my kids, I think, when it was on Netflix last year, and it was hilarious because my kids was kids were this is awful. And I was like, thank you so much for actually having taste, children.
Was that the one with the Riddler and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze?
Not the Riddler. The Riddler was in the Batman Forever with Two-Face.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it had Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. It had so many people. It was insane. It had Uma Thurman and her henchman, which was also turns out her henchman was Bane at the end of the movie, which was nuts. And then the guy in the movie was John Glover, who was in the Smallville was Lex Luthor's dad.
Oh wow.
So he was Uma Thurman's helper. I can't remember his name. He created Poison Ivy or something in the movie.
Oh, nice.
And so there was Poison Ivy, there was Mr. Freeze, there was Bane, and was there anybody else?
I'm realizing I don't remember anything from that movie.
It's awful. I mean, and then they had the heroes.
Oh.
They had not only like Batman and Alfred and Robin, but they had Batgirl.
Was that the one Alicia Silverstone?
Alicia Silverstone.
Oh wow.
This one's called Batman and Robin.
That's funny because wasn't Robin in the other ones?
Yeah, he was in because there was one before that.
Is that Batman Forever?
Gosh, I think it was Batman for.
So the one
I lose it. Who knows?
So the one that actually makes sense though. So it's funny. So Batman Returns is where we meet Catwoman and Penguin, which is my favorite Batman, and then Batman Forever introduces Robin, and then Batman and Robin introduces Batgirl.
Yeah.
There's the logic.
Yeah, like the Batman Forever had Val Kilmer as Batman, and it had was it Christopher?
Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah, Chris O'Donnell as Robin, and then the next movie, Batman and Robin, Chris O'Donnell was still Robin, but Batman was George Clooney.
Oh wow, I did not connect that at all.
It's just awful.
When was that everybody? Did we get everybody?
So Batman and Robin was the last one before they rebooted in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
Huh. 97. That's about right. I mean, I still liked all four of those movies. I mean, definitely the latter ones were really bad. But I feel like Batman Returns. You know what? I haven't watched it in a while, but I want to say if I watched it again now, it probably holds up pretty well.
There's some funny stuff at the end. There's some great parts in it. I'll definitely give you that. There's some funny weird things at the end. Like there's like these penguins in it that like actually walk around and do things. Like I think they were like rocket penguins.
I remember that.
Oh yeah,
they strapped them with like rocket launchers and stuff.
Yeah,
I actually really liked that as a kid. I remember that there was like McDonald's toys or something with them.
Oh, it was so like the first movie was so grounded in like almost like a real world, even though it was like very dark.
Mm-hmm.
Like jumping into that being so goofy in the second movie at the end is just a little. It pulls you out of it just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like if that wouldn't have been in it, I'd have been 100% solid that sequel was amazing. Like okay, great.
Yeah.
The first one is my hands down favorite Batman though. I mean, we got onto it from the cartoon.
Yeah.
But yeah, Batman cartoon was amazing.
The animated series is really solid.
I think that even did you ever watch Batman Beyond?
Yeah.
Oh,
I loved Batman Beyond. That was so good.
A little bit, but I don't know. I think it was because I was a little bit older. Like I was in high school. I didn't watch as much of it.
I definitely didn't watch it in high school. Like the animation then you could tell was different from like that. You know, very. I don't know what the difference is because even in the original cartoon. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. In the original Batman cartoon, there's like a point in the middle where the animation changes. And at that point, like I remember being like disinterested because it looked weird to me as a kid, and I feel like that was also with Batman Beyond. Like the animation was different, and I wasn't interested in it, and it was the end of high school, and I was probably just more interested in being upset over girls.
Yeah, I remember the Batman Beyond soundtrack I really liked, and there was like the title of one of the songs was something like genetic theft. I remember now. Because I don't even remember what the song sounded like. I just remember that title was so cool. Like, a bunch of us were like, we're going to start a band called Genetic Theft. We never did. But
that's a really cool name.
Did you actually
for a
have
band,
this on
though.
CD?
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed.
Because at Walmart, we would just troll the CD section. We saw the Batman Beyond soundtrack. And I remember it was because of that song. We're like, Genetic Theft? I'm going to get this.
It's funny because, like, the 90s being...
I might actually have it on my...
amazing for cartoons was also amazing for soundtracks. Like, the amount of soundtracks were just pumped out into the 90s. Like,
well, because... so the first Batman was Prince. Was Batman Returns Kiss from a Rose? Or was that Batman...
No, that was Batman Forever.
Okay.
Because that not only had Kiss from a Rose on it, but it had Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me.
Oh, that's right.
You on
it. You too, yeah.
Wow, what a killer soundtrack.
It was good. I remember that soundtrack being big.
What? Batman Beyond. I might have it on my iTunes.
Did you? So I looked up like some facts for the animated series, and it says that it was Tim Burton influenced. I didn't know that.
Which is why the Penguin's fat in it. Because I believe in the cartoons, and I could be wrong because I suck at DC information, or in the comics.
So does DC.
The Penguin was not fat earlier beyond that.
Interesting. Did you? I didn't know this either, but when they created Batman the animated series, the two creators are the ones who actually voiced the characters in their series, that series that they started, to become an exclusive on one of the networks. That was like their pilot.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
I didn't know that.
Now, you remember the old Batman show though? It had it was the guy Mick from Rocky.
Oh,
He was the Penguin.
Holy crap! Oh yeah,
In
In
Adam
the
West.
old Adam West series.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, so I don't know. Seriously, I don't know. When was Penguin? You're discovering things as I discover things. What was Penguin's first appearance? Batman Penguin's first appearance.
The Penguin's first appearance is Detective Comics number 58.
Oh wow, 1941.
Oh,
he does look kind of fat.
We should sit like Siri or like Google Assistant like as one of the podcast members. Just set it's like always on, and they could converse, or actually have all the AIs here and see if they can like outwit everybody.
Yeah, just challenge them.
There was a something else about this series. I'm trying to remember what it was. That was really neat.
The animated series?
Yeah.
Everything. It was solid writing. It was just like the X-Men animated series. We were talking with Ron Wasserman about it, and he and the rest of the crew that did the X-Men animated series all said like the key to a good children's program is to not to write down to kids. It's to write a good show that kids could enjoy. Because the thing is like when you're a little kid, the one of the things that you despise is being like seeming too young. But like you always want to be like your older brother. You always want to be like the older kids, or the upperclassmen and stuff. So like if you found a show that felt like it's kind of like what Rick and Morty is for adults. Like it does take a little bit of intellect to watch, but I feel like people who watch it are way more entitled, or feel more entitled with the knowledge. Like it's a funny show, but you don't have to be a literal rocket scientist to watch it. But I think some fans feel like they're literal rocket scientists watching it. Hence, why McDonald's get like swarmed for like Szechuan sauce and stuff.
They have a rabid fan base. Like I love that show, but the people that are like actually, they kind of annoy me a lot.
But I think that's the thing. I think the thing about like feeling like something isn't written down to you is like a huge attraction for shows like that. So I think like animated series like the X-Men and Batman animated series, I think they were like that because you could watch them now as adults. You're like there was actual like drama and plot and humor and stuff.
It was made for both. I like that. Yeah.
And when you go back and watch, I remember very specifically the animated series of Batman. There was score for like dramatic moments or like something heroic happening, but there was a lot of times there was like nothing, like no music happening. Like there were dialogue between like the Joker and Harley Quinn, where all you heard was the reverb in the room and like the footsteps on the concrete and stuff, and it made it seem, I don't know if real is the right word, but it gave like the awkwardness of like the conversation, like like some real like weight, because the relationship between Harley Quinn and the Joker was like real messed up, and I even knew that as a kid. I'm like, she shouldn't be with him. He's really abusive, like emotionally and physically. Like, he's tried to kill her a lot of times. I remember that being, like, a weird thing. I'm like, that girl's boyfriend keeps trying to kill her, but she's still with him.
That's kind of dark. The whole thing is dark. I mean, like, not only visually dark, but, like, I remember being scared of that show. Like, as a kid. Yeah. Like, I mean...
Dude, Scarecrow, man.
Not scared enough to, like, not watch it, but, like, I don't know. I can't remember how old I would be. It was 92, so I'd probably be 10. So, yeah, I mean, I remember just being like, this is creepy.
Yeah.
But... No, I still watch it, obviously.
I remember the episodes of Scarecrow were so like visually like really scary.
Yeah, I found that thing I was looking for. It said the animators Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski created this short pilot film in order to pitch their Batman series to the network exclusives. They voiced it themselves. With Tim providing Batman's grunts and Radomski's providing everything else. Wow, that's amazing.
It's actually, because I've seen it before, it looks a lot like the intro.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Okay, so the show we grew up with wasn't their voices. It was the pilot.
It became
Gotcha.
And then the other thing that there was something like weird about it was Tim Curry was supposed to be Joker.
Oh, really?
But they ended up going with that.
He sounds like he could be a good Joker.
Yeah, but Was that the Joker that was Mark Hamill? Or was that
Yes.
another Joker? That was him?
Mark Hamill ended up being the Joker.
I love... one of my favorite things... I mean, a lot of bad things came out of the last election season, but, like, one of my favorite things that came out of the last election season is Mark Hamill reading Trump tweets as the Joker from the animated series. That was pretty entertaining. And then Josh Brolin read Donald Trump tweets as Thanos.
Oh, yeah.
That was not as funny. Like, I mean, like, the idea is funny. But, like, he read them and I was like, eh. Like, I was hoping for so much more.
You know what, actually... it's not as funny, but it would be a good... Have you played You Don't Know Jack?
It's been a long time.
So, like, there's a section called This or That, and they take two completely different things. It's like, quote from Eleanor Roosevelt or Sex in the City. And it's really, you're like, wow, is that from her? Or is that from one of those girls from the show? And I feel like that would be a good one to be like, who said it, Thanos or Donald Trump?
Oh.
I've seen a bunch of those. I think I saw a Mr. Burns or Mitt Romney one.
Oh, really?
Those were great, too.
That's so
good.
funny. But yeah, no, that... I remember that, and then there was an episode of the animated series that sticks with me the most, because I remember it so vividly. I don't know how this happened, but Harley Quinn was, like, allowed to be normal. Like, she got out of prison.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the better episodes.
And she couldn't get away from the crime. Like, it was weird, because it just kept spiraling. Like, no one thought that she was a criminal anymore, because they didn't recognize her. But then, like, the second, like, something small happened, it, like, triggered her. And it just kept spiraling, down until she became, like, a criminal again. But as an adult and even as a kid, I remember, like, watching that. Like, man, it wasn't like SpongeBob or like Goofy or anything like that, or wasn't a ton of action. But like, I got it. Like, as young as whenever that was, like 96, 97 or something.
92 and 93.
Really?
Yeah, that's because the first couple seasons are the ones that aren't like changed animation yet.
So yeah, so I was 10 or 11. At being 10 or 11 and understanding like the emotional arc of a character.
Yeah.
Like, that was really good
right?
writing. Yeah, like, I remember the visuals from the episode very clearly.
I love that Harley Quinn was actually influenced by pinup girls.
That makes sense. And she was created in that show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
the
actually,
first-
I listened to, I think, one of Kevin Smith's podcasts with is it Bruce Timm, I think? I can't remember. No, it wasn't Bruce Timm. It was the other guy that helped create her.
It was Tim. It says here, made a name for himself and continues to be popular for his first love, pinups. And then it says, drawing female characters in lewd and flat-out unclothed poses helped make him the darling of comic fanboys everywhere. His classic style influenced by Art Deco.
Paul Dini, though, is the guy that kind of created the character himself. I think Tim...
the story, line, everything, probably.
Because the story what I heard was Paul Dini talking about, like, he needed to give Joker, like, a sidekick of some sort, and he was homesick. And when he was homesick at that time, way back when, in 90s, you only had a few channels to watch, and there's on TV, and there's nothing on television but, like, daytime soaps. And so he was watching a daytime soap, and there's, like, a funny, like, a jester and, like, a queen and stuff dressed up in these giant, almost like Alice in Wonderland kind of thing.
Yeah, nice.
On the show. And one of the girls on the show was, like, this one girl, Harley Quinn, and I think the lady still he actually called that lady up, who was
Arlene Sorkin?
I think that's it.
Starring Arlene Sorkin.
I think he called her up and asked her to do the voice for Harley Quinn. And that was from that actual daytime soap.
That's awesome. Yeah, it says she's been ever since. Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
I thought she might have passed away. How old is she? Because I think the butler from the show, Alfred, the guy that voiced him, passed away not too long ago.
He's the benchmark of Alfred for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just because that was like my most like influential time frame or whatever. But whenever I think of Alfred from Batman, I think of that Alfred.
Yes, me too. That's just because that's as much of DC that I really got was from that show. So I never read DC comics at all.
You know what's...
I don't think I did either.
More ridiculous is the first DC... the first time DC made comics on like a television thing like that, I think it was in the 60s or something like that.
Oh, with like the Super Friends.
Oh, yeah.
Was it Not Super Friends. Was it Super Friends?
I think it was Super Friends.
Super Friends that had the Justice League in it.
But they also had like two characters that were like Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
Yeah.
The New Adventures of Superman was 1966.
Oh yeah, well you talk about they have the old, because even that version. Sorry, I jump around. That version, the guy that created them, also pioneered some crazy rotoscoping stuff for for the Superman stuff, because he did a bunch of shorts, right?
Yeah, it was the New Adventures of Superman, the Adventures of Superboy, the Superman Aquaman Hour of Adventure, Aquaman, the Batman and Superman Hour, and the Adventure of Batman, all in the late 60s.
Oh, that was
Sounds like a name for the show.
Super Friends was 73.
So that's so random because it's at the time of recording this, Aquaman is getting ready to go into theaters, and that show, I don't know, I can't remember seeing Aquaman since that show.
Oh wow, yeah.
So it's weird, kids or us, we think of Aquaman and we think of the whitest guy ever with blonde hair,
There's that logo, man.
Yeah.
It's that drawn Aquaman logo.
And it's so hilarious, all the memes that came out of that.
Yeah. But then
and
now
his outfit.
I'm wondering what it's going to be like from this year going on, if Josh, if your daughter's vision of Aquaman is Jason Momoa.
Wow.
A really hunky I don't know if he's half Hawaiian or he's ambiguous Pacific Islander. It's
great.
Kind of thing, but
ooh, New Adventures of Batman was the first cartoon.
But
77.
Vince and I were at the Aquaman premiere. Josh hasn't seen Are you going to go see Aquaman?
I am going to go see Aquaman. I just
okay. So we won't talk about spoilers here. I won't speak for everybody, but for me, it was fine. But not in the sense of sometimes you go see movies and the whole thing is just fine. This one had spikes of some of the best cinematic moments I've ever seen in hit superhero movies, down to the most stupid scenes I've ever seen in superhero movies.
Oh. Yeah, that card. Sorry, I was showing Vince something. The Superman cartoon I was talking about was a Fleischer. I think that's right, Fleischer.
Yeah.
Cartoon.
And it was in the 40s.
And I think that they put them in front of movies, I think, or something like that. You could go see them at the theater.
Paramount.
Yeah, and they're amazing. I don't know if you ever got way back in the day, if you had VHS, sometimes for babysitting and stuff, people would get these 6 hours of cartoons, and they'd always cram just a bunch of different random Bugs Bunny and just junk into it. But they'd often cram into these old Superman cartoons I remember seeing. And they're very classy looking. They kind of look a little bit like the Batman, the 92 Batman. Just that old, vibe.
I love how
the old cars.
This thumbnail, it says in Technicolor, it has to tell you, because back then you needed to know that type of thing. That's so interesting.
In Technicolor.
It's it's not black and white, people. And it's not just regular color.
Because it used to be, I was trying to look up on the DC Universe app, they used to have them on this DC Universe app. But
that's insane, though, to think 1940s they were making little comic reels that go in front of movies and were being distributed by Paramount. How much history do we have in comics? How much history do we have in all of this stuff, man? The movies, the TV shows.
Yeah, just real quick.
It's ridiculous.
I'm sure you.
I remember this.
And you watch it and it's from the 40s and it looks actually really good.
Love the soundtrack. It's very bandstandy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
So much bullets and guns.
It's actually really good.
That's what I'm telling you, they look really, really good. They're done by an actual film guy. And not just, remember, I don't know, I'll pause it so we don't get in trouble.
Wow, that's so loud.
They look really, really well done. And they're done in the 40s, so
That's amazing.
Yeah, they're short. They're only, what, 10 minutes? They're 10 minutes long.
I'm really surprised of the quality.
That's what I said. I think they did some pioneering, rotoscoping kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For this specifically. And so...
It's really cool.
Yeah. I don't know where I was going with it. I forgot.
Well, it's the freaking oldest, probably comic or cartoon to date. I don't know if there's anything.
I think that's what you were talking about. I think I was trying to get to it.
Yeah,
it was the oldest one.
As far as DC's,
look them up if you can. I know they're on the DC Universe app. You can get like a week free for that, which is what I have, or a month free for that. I don't know if I'm going to continue paying for it afterwards, but yeah, you can watch all those shorts that he created, and they're very beautiful. They look great. I think it is the first Superman cartoon.
It's crazy. I was trying to figure out like what DC or cartoon came out the year you were born. I wonder if there's like a way to find out, or what DC anything was created in your year.
I wish they had like a was it?
Like a wiki that just has everything. I was
every
just trying to find
cartoon
that
chronologically. My brain.
Like everything. In 1984, the Super Friends, the legendary Superpowers show, and then in '85 was the Superpowers team Galactic Guardians. I've never seen that, but it's like all the usual suspects. Like I see Cyborg in there.
Wow.
Superman.
Have you ever seen this?
I don't think so.
Galactic.
If anybody's lost, just Vince is scrolling down the Wikipedia for like Superman or something.
Yeah.
So like that's the order this conversation is going in.
Yeah, it's not very good order.
Is it as
We were talking about cartoons.
Well, I did pose the question before I started, which was purposeful.
Gosh. We may need to edit this. But yeah, like I've never seen those cartoons that you're talking about. What's the name of that again?
Oh, I don't know. I was just scrolling off it.
But there's a bunch of cartoons in the 80s that I never watched because it was just before my time. They had that Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That's finally on Netflix, and then I watched it with my kids. And it was as goofy as all get out. And I think Fred, the guy that did voiced Fred from Scooby-Doo, voiced Iceman in that.
Oh.
So whenever I hear him talking, it just, it's Fred. So,
I've only ever seen the first episode, but hundreds of times.
yeah.
Because it's the only one that like re-airs on things naturally. And then I think I also had like either I can't remember if it was VHS or DVD, but there was some collection of superhero shows, and that is always on. That was on that, and it was on a bunch of other ones too. But I remember Firestar, Iceman, and Spider-Man. Spider-Man is Amazing Friends. And I remember that episode is also when they had the conversation where they decided like, what should we call this little group? You know, it was very like 60s. Was that 80s though? It had like a 60s vibe.
I think it might be 70s, like maybe late
77.
Because, like, it was just like every conversation was like weird exposition to like the creation of the brand. It was like, what should we call ourselves? Why do you have to call yourselves anything? You know, but they're like, how about Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends? Sure, that's a logical conclusion.
Actually, I don't know.
Spider-Man, I'm the head of all you guys.
Yeah. But
I don't actually
think it was
know.
Firestar that came up with it or something. If I remember right. They also never explained how she could fly. There was a very loose explanation that she changed the temperature around her fast enough to allow her to levitate, but I was like, sure.
I mean, it's the same
That's
thing
fine.
as Human Torch, so.
Sure.
I mean, I
Yeah.
figured it'd be the
83.
same
No.
pseudoscience.
Yeah.
I think this was in the 80s.
I remember the girls watched it a bunch and it was so goofy, like what you're saying. Like I couldn't really handle watching a lot of it, like not being in that era, and I could handle the Spider-Man series, the '67 one for some odd reason, but that one I don't know. It seemed a little bit too goofy, especially when I heard the guy that sounded like Fred from Scooby-Doo. But at the end of the series, they started bringing in like X-Men, so they had actually like Colossus and Warpath for some odd reason.
Because they
Warpath,
in
that's
that
awesome.
first episode, they actually referenced that Bobby, that Iceman, was like on a break from the X-Men or something. I think, and maybe even Firestar.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I can't remember, but that was the time because Iceman was in the X-Men as well. Well, obviously, he's in the X-Men as well. But like, it was random. Like, it'd be interesting to be a fly on the wall in that conversation of like how they decided that those were the two that were going to be with Spider-Man. Like, who hasn't had much traction lately? Put Iceman in there.
Oh, gosh. Spider-Man, because Spider-Man probably was still big, at the time, and I know the X-Men had died off by that time. Like if you take a look at the comics, the dates and when they were published, they kind of are just republishing the old comics, and nobody was really into X-Men. Even in the beginning, people didn't really catch on to the X-Men. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I can't remember It wasn't until they released like the Storm, Colossus, Cyclops, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, X-Men team in that one big issue. There was like a big... I can't even remember it off the top of my head. I'm so dumb sometimes. But that wasn't until them that you saw all those new X-Men. And so that's when I feel like the same time when that cartoon was that they were maybe trying to push, like, hey, look, we got new X-Men.
So this was 1981 to 1983 was Spiderman and His Amazing Friends.
So it was the 80s. It had a very, like, 60s vibe about it.
It did.
I don't know if that's just because the people creating it, were from, like, born in the 60s or living through the 60s and stuff.
It looked a lot like Scooby-Doo. Like, it really did.
But I also, like, I feel like all these decades are, like, shifted a little bit because most of what people reference as the 90s usually are, like, at least in fashion and, like, aesthetic and stuff, are actually, like, early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of things people are like, oh, that's so 80s. It's like, oh, those are early 90s. Yep. So I wonder if that's also, like, part of the shift. Like, in my head, it's a 60s aesthetic, but maybe it was more like a late 70s.
The only way I've been able to really, like, determine between just cartoons in general, not just Marvel, the 80s from the 90s is... The 90s was, like, Doug and Rugrats and... all that like similar kind of looking stuff from Nickelodeon at the time.
Nickelodeon like owned at home viewing, and then Disney started breaking through with the DuckTales and DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. And,
they did all that after school.
Yeah, the Disney Afternoon.
Yeah, is that what it was called?
Yeah, Disney Afternoon.
Hanna-Barbera was like 80s.
So it was Disney Afternoon was DuckTales, Gummy Bears, Tailspin. I think at some point Darkwing Duck. I want to say Goof Troop was at some point part of that.
Yeah, I think it's towards the end of it.
But that was such a concerted effort because we talked to our friends, the Silvershires, who wrote the Gummy Bears and Tailspin theme songs, and they also did music for the other Disney shows. And it was like a plan from Disney to like have like after school programming for kids and stuff. And it was the whole thing. It was very purposeful, but it was well done. So it wasn't like an accident that these shows came together.
And, that makes sense.
But DuckTales ended up becoming like the king of them all,
Yeah, I don't know if they like actually... Because I loved Gummy Bears, but whenever I talk to anybody, like, oh, you remember Gummy Bears? People are like, no.
I don't think very many people remember the show. They remember that theme song.
Yep.
And the things that happened in the intro, which is funny because... they wrote that song not knowing anything about the show. Well, they hadn't seen the show. They said they saw drawings, and there was like a show Bible about the universe, and so like the song kind of reads as exposition for the show. It's like they have this gummy juice and they bounce, and like so.
You guys remember the Snorks? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Out of like all the '90s comics, I keep calling them comics. Cartoons, but what was your favorites?
Cartoons? It was hands down the X-Men animated series.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 90s for that.
I mean, I love Nickelodeon too. I love Ren and Stimpy specifically.
I just want to name off a few of these. So, Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters was that time.
That one actually scared me as a kid, but I'd still watch it.
I had so many of those toys from the real Ghostbusters.
Bobby's World. There's obviously way more
Bobby's
than this.
World a lot. I watched so many cartoons when I was little. I watched all.
Muppet Babies.
Muppet Babies was amazing.
Ren and Stimpy, sorry.
Bobby's World was funny because Uncle Ted would always call Bobby, who I believe was voiced by Howie Mandel.
Yeah,
Babo.
Right. He would always call Bobby Babo. In Korean, Pabo means like stupid or like you're dumb or something. So my mom would always, my parents are Korean, and so they'd always walk into the room like, why is that uncle being so mean to that child? Yeah, and then Muppet Babies, like, I love, that was one of the first times that I had seen so much, I guess it was rotoscoping?
Raspberry.
Nice. For a second I thought it was going to be like something nasty. Try again?
Oh, it was the first time I'd seen so much, like, I don't know if it's called rotoscoping.
I think rotoscoping is when you take, like, actual life And then screen by screen, you redraw over the top of somebody. It's like saying, like, I want someone that's going to, like, turn around the corner. Because, like, animation very, like, 2D, moving back and forth. Like, it's just, like, you're on the same plane. But you want someone to kind of walk towards you, and, like, their face is going to get bigger. They're going to turn to the side and stuff. That's hard for them to actually do. So they wanted someone to... And I could just be pulling all this crap out of my rear. But they wanted it to look better. And so I think it's called rotoscoping, to where, like, they'll film somebody doing it. Like, doing a funky dance, and then they'll just go clip by clip, and they'll draw over the top of it.
Wow.
Because in Muppet Babies, there were multiple times every episode, but at least every episode, like Gonzo would open up the closet door, and it'd be like a scene from like Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right.
Or something, or like they'd be running away from like the big rock from Indiana Jones, but it'd actually be like a big rock, but then the cartoon characters and stuff. And I remember as a kid, it was like, I think this is a joke for the adults. Like, because it was funny to see Kermit run away from something or Gonzo run away from something, but I didn't get it. Like, I don't know why. Why was Star Wars inside the closet? Like, but I don't know. It was interesting because
LSD.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, but
they shook LSD into the diapers.
Does that well, that's another thing. Half of them didn't wear diapers, did they?
I don't think
Probably not.
It was like just a random group of people. Like, I knew...
babies.
Actually, even in the intro, they had like the Star Wars, early Star Wars-esque kind of thing, like all the real life stuff. But
well, they did a lot like imagining.
Yeah.
Show imagination.
Holy crap!
I also remember as a kid, like my parents did those like mail order like book services where you got like another couple books every month, and one of them was a hardcover books of the Muppet Babies, and it was that same thing. It was an imagination thing. It was like Kermit like couldn't fall asleep because like a fly was keeping him up, and so he imagined like riding the fly like into another universe and stuff. And I was like, man, these story writers did drugs.
That's what my dad said about turtles. He's like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're all probably smoking dope in there. Probably true.
Because if you ever watched The Toys That Made Us, like the episode with He-Man, those writers, man, like they seem like the worst people I would never want to be around, but they created such great stuff. And they even talked about like how at the peak of like the success of He-Man, they would just get real high in the writers' room and come up with the weirdest characters and character names. You know, I remember them saying exactly. They were like, they're just passing like a joint around, something like Evil Lynn. Yeah, that's her name. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Did you guys watch Inspector Gadget?
Mm-hmm.
I was so intrigued with the Professor Claw or Mr. Claw or whatever it was.
You always wanted to see his face.
Dr. Claw's face.
Dr. Claw. That's what it was.
I saw Dr. Claw's face because if you bought the action figure, you could see his face. In the action figure packet, it had a piece of cardboard over his face, and if you bought it, you could see it. I don't remember what it looks like at all.
I remember those awful movies that they showed his face, like
with
the Matthew Broderick one.
Matthew Broderick.
Yeah.
Remember when who was it? Was it Youngstown or something? Some boy group did the Inspector Gadget theme song.
I know there was a punk rock band that did it, Lagwagon.
It wasn't them. There was like a bubblegum pop version of the Inspector Gadget theme song. I can't think.
I love that band's named Lagwagon. That's a random thing.
It could be something disgusting because I listened to punk rock back in the day, and they had I didn't know like when I was like 12 what circle jerks were. So like there was a band called Circle Jerks.
Jeez.
Inspector Gadget movie.
Worst punk band name. Go.
Exactly. Circle Jerks. They're all like that though. Sex Pistols.
Yeah. Man, there's too many. Just to like type in 90s cartoons and looking at all these properties, it's not even fair how many cartoons came out in that decade.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that Rocko's Modern Life was in the same decade as, or the same like century as like Dexter's Laboratory. Like that was both. They were both in the 90s, just like different decades.
That's what I was saying. I think the last podcast, or maybe depending on how they're split up, like last time that we got together, like saying like the 90s felt like it was so far apart. Like every year was so big.
Yeah.
That Like, you think, like, oh, that must be in the 2000s that happened. Like, but no, everything from, like, 1990, so much crap crammed into that.
It was like, it's like technology now. Mm-hmm. That's what it reminds me of. Like, people were like, it's like, oh, no, you know, what we could do in 10 years back in the day, we can do in 1 year now.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it feels like with these cartoons. It's like, what decade were they from? Like, I feel like...
It was Youngstown for the Inspector Gadget movie. But it wasn't the Inspector Gadget theme song, but it was. It was actually a single off their actual album.
Dang.
Called I'll Be Your Everything, but listen to this intro.
Oh, how could they get away with that?
I mean, I'm sure they credited it, but it was part of the Inspector Gadget movie.
That's cool.
You gotta watch out with stuff like that. You know, you probably get dinged on Spotify or whatever it is.
Oh, wow. I remember the band, Pat McGee Band, they used to play at this place called Wolf Trap in Virginia. And the bass player at the time, this is like the height of their band, dumb. Mm-hmm. They had like 3-part harmonies, lots of people on stage, maybe like 12 people on stage. Mm-hmm. But the bassist was like this really nasty bassist. And for a part of his like solo that he took during the show was Inspector Gadget. And since then, I've always tried to like learn it on bass.
Mm-hmm. That's how actually the Lagwagon song was on bass. I think at the beginning.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember besides that. I don't know the lyrics. I don't know.
Who wrote that original song?
Probably your friends.
Inspector Gadget
Boopy-doopy-doo-boop-boo.
theme song.
I like that the guy that voiced Inspector Gadget was also the same guy from Get Smart.
Oh.
That makes sense, because now I'm hearing it in my head. They sound exactly the same.
I loved Get Smart when I was little, which is like, if you haven't seen Get Smart, it's like a stupid detective show. They actually redid a movie of it a while ago with Steve Carell. Thank you, my daughter who should be in bed. Steve Carell. But the movie was awful. Nothing like the show. The show was really, really just crazy stupid. Like, he was kind of like a half-wit, but he always, just the same way with Inspector Gadget, I guess, which is why he probably perfectly fit into it.
Was Inspector Gadget also a Haim Saban project? Because it credits the writer as Shuki Levy, who I don't know actually wrote, if Shuki ever wrote music. Let's take a look. That's interesting, though. It was by Deke. I remember that always being. Mm-hmm. I can hear it. Deke.
Mm-hmm. I always remember the dog one. It was like, oh gosh, how does it go? Next, come here, whatever. Good dog. Ruff, ruff.
Oh yeah.
What was that?
Citribute, it.
Mm-hmm. It's Ubu.
Was it Ubu?
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that
Ubu,
name.
sit. Good dog.
I just remember like the sound of the syllables, like Citribute, sit. Like so, like I was like, well, I don't know what that means. Like,
I forgot about like the rival cartoons. Like, I wasn't just looking that up. I was just thinking about it in my head. Like, I was trying to remember when He-Man came out, what the rival of He-Man was at the time, or like when Batman came out, what was the who was like the competitor? Because they all had to have competitors.
Yeah.
The only one I can think of really though, and which makes sense, is Garfield and Heathcliff.
Yes,
they were different completely, but
like
they were
Heathcliff was a little earlier.
They were two like yellow or orange cats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heathcliff though was a lot more like street, like it's
like
weird
neighborhood
though, because I don't know, I could be wrong about this, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking like there was less competition, but a lot of knockoffs.
Yeah.
So I feel like when there was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there was also like Biker Mice from Mars.
Yep.
And like Street Sharks.
So it wasn't necessarily competition, but it was like
cats.
It was like follow-ups. Yeah. I saw a clip the other day someone shared on Facebook of Mummies Alive. Do you remember that? It was
I do remember that.
It's literally like Power Rangers, but mummies. Mm-hmm. But like I wouldn't have remembered it either, except I saw.
They turn into mummies?
No, so it's hard. It's kind of weird. So it's like they're like mummies, and then when they power up, they turn into like the dressed up versions of them. Like they'll get the gold. Like they don't have gold or anything on them. They're like corpses, like wrapped in bandages and stuff. And then, like, when they become, like, the mummies alive, they'll get, like, the Sphinx, like all the gold, and, like, they'll look like the gods and stuff.
I do kind of remember that.
That sounds freaking ridiculous.
But that was kind of like it wasn't live action. It was an animated thing, but it was very much like a Power Rangers.
Okay. So I'm thinking it's, like, actually live action.
But that, once again, it was like, I feel like that was less of a competitor, more of like a knockoff kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of knockoffs.
But I think that was that era. It was like, there's not necessarily competing. There was just like people trying to like do something very similar.
I get that. Yeah.
Mummy's Live was more like I don't know what time it was, but it was more along the lines of like Silverhawks or Thundercats or something. Yeah. So like that. This I'm showing the guys the intro to this. So this is when they're in their powered versions. They have like all the gold and the like superpower stuff, but like before they're that, but they're all like superhero versions of mummies, you know, like, so that's before, and then there's after, you know, like they turn into like the gods and stuff. But then what else was it? There was like but some stuff became like competition, I guess, because you know, I don't know if it was good or the following, because like you said, like Heathcliff and Garfield, I feel like Garfield has always been like the juggernaut of that, but people really remember Heathcliff like very fondly because he was kind of like the, I don't know, like Garfield didn't have a job, like he just kind of mooched off John and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But then Heathcliff was like on the street, like scrapping for food every day at a garbage can.
Well, was Heathcliff like a newspaper comic? Newspaper comic, which is when I was younger, like if you're older or if you're younger, they used to have comic strips. I'm sure they still do in newspapers on Sunday mornings, especially.
Kathy,
So
Mondays,
like,
right?
Yeah, it'd be like five. It'd be 5 like drawings in a row, and then you could look at them and be like, "Oh, there's a little tiny bit of a story. It's funny. It's a joke."
Marmaduke was my favorite.
Marmaduke. And I don't know. Was Heathcliff ever a comic? Like
I think so, but I don't remember watching it.
Garfield was huge, which is why I feel like he's the champion of that versus Heathcliff, because he was so well known. It'd be like Peanuts versus something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, what else was there other than Peanuts? There had to have been something.
Well, there's all that garbage like Beetle Bailey and stuff like that. I want to really know if Heathcliff was a newspaper.
To have been. Like it had to
was Heathcliff a newspaper comic?
According to Creators Syndicate, in 1973, Gately followed on his initial success with Heathcliff, the first ever newspaper comic to feature a cat as the main character. Called the Cat of the Century by a major cat magazine, Heathcliff has been an incredible success.
Heathcliff.
So Heathcliff outdates Garfield.
Wow.
Nice.
1973. When was Garfield made?
I don't know. But Jim, what's his face? He's from Indiana, isn't he? Jim Davis. Let's look it up. Garfield. Do you remember getting those like books? 1978.
Oh, yeah. So Heathcliff was first.
Wow. Remember getting those books of Garfield comics? It'd be kind of like a coffee table book.
I would get the Calvin and Hobbes books all the time.
I'd see those more often than the Garfield ones.
I love Calvin and Hobbes. Someone on YouTube, like within the last 5-6 years maybe, did like a trailer for our Calvin and Hobbes movie that looked awesome.
Oh yeah, I
was
forgot
it depressing?
About that.
Like
a little bit. The kid had grown up, and then they realized that he has like hallucinations, and that's.
It sounds like the plot story to the Christopher Robin movie that just came out.
I haven't seen that yet.
I wanted to see it. I
want to see that too, actually. Yeah.
It's kind of like Finding Neverland or something. It's like the child that never grew up.
Wouldn't it be cool if Stewie from, I know this is impossible, but if Stewie from Family Guy, or if Hey Arnold is like when Stewie's older and he changed his name.
The universe is
because they're football heads. They're both football heads. And they're both like called football heads in this show.
Dude, Arnold. Hey Arnold, that's another one. That was like one of the first I remember cartoons where the roles were reversed. All of the old people were like children.
Yeah.
And all the kids were like the responsible ones trying to like hold their shit together.
Yeah.
Like while like the grandpa was like sledding down the stairs and stuff. And then Arnold's like, "Grandpa, we have to run our business." Like and then like was it Helga? Was like the love interest, but not the love, like he wasn't into her, but she was into him. And it was like there was like love triangles and stuff. It was like a lot of drama, and the grandparents were all like senile, basically like toddlers.
And then you have Doug, which is like completely opposite.
Doug.
He's like carefree and
That's
just,
way
like,
before though. Like
he just like cares too much.
And I always say like the years I'm sure aren't that far apart, but like I never watched a single episode of Hey Arnold.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I feel like that was like the last show that I really watched was probably Real Monsters.
Ah, yeah.
I loved Real Monsters.
Mm-hmm. And then
remember those Happy Meal toys? I don't know if it was Happy Meal or like Hardee's or something.
I used to get really grossed out by them because their currency was toenail clippings.
Oh, that's
right.
Or just nail clippings.
That's right. What were you gonna say, Josh?
I was like I never watched Hey Arnold or anything after that, like with Jimmy Neutron and all the things beyond that.
I didn't see that.
I feel like that was my last bit before going to college. I think I'm sure that Hey Arnold probably came out in like 97 or 98.
That sounds about right.
So like that's the year when I kind of started. I had to get more serious into school, and I think I was in a little bit of the sports too. So like my life was a little bit taken over with punk rock music and sports. So
yeah.
I watched Hey Arnold. What else? Oh, and Recess was around that time.
Recess.
that's another one I've never. I might have seen a little bit of it. But.
Dude, Recess is so good. That'd be a good one to watch with your girls because like it presents like kind of like an extended version of Lord of the Flies. Mm-hmm. Because there's a whole like society on the recess playground, which any kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s know that's completely true. Mm-hmm. Like the middle schoolers, like the junior hires, are like the royalty. Like and then the preschoolers are like the Aborigines. They don't speak English, like, you know. And then all the kids in between, they're like in grade school but not preschool, are like just trying to figure like the socioeconomic politics of like the playground floor. And then there's the old lady who's the teacher that watches everything, and she's just like a downer on everything. This is a really interesting series, and I think it still holds up too, even just like the look of it.
I agree. I think that show was pretty cool. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I definitely watched a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like I said earlier, I'm into like pop punk and stuff like that, and there's a lot of people from that show that they'll take pictures of people in bands nowadays, and they look exactly like people from that show. So like,
Yeah.
it's just like this kid grew up to be this kid.
Totally, because that was in the middle of like when grunge was like the thing that went from underground to mainstream. And so like there was like an Asian girl on the recess field, and she had the Seattle sound like look. You know, like you could tell that she listened to Soundgarden when she went home. You know. So we continue this conversation for a little bit more. Make sure you check out the next episode to complete this. I think this pears thing is happening here, like not the fruit, but like two.
Yeah, we come together, we'll do something super long, and then we'll chop it in 2 pieces.
That's right.
But
Pineapple pen.
Vince and I are RKVC, or band, and a YouTube channel, and Josh has a podcast called Band's Life. Music and bands, and we appear on that once, and his daughters have a podcast, Nerd Schmurd, or not podcast, YouTube show, Nerd Schmurd.
Yep.
And you can find us all on YouTube and the Twitters and Instagrams, and all that stuff. RKVC and A Band's Life and Nerd Schmurd.
Yeah, and catch the next segment, and we'll see you there.